people show you their highlights reel, never has that been more the case than at the moment where you've got a camera and the filters and all that crap, something that everyone talks about. But, this is
talking about Instagram here.
I'm talking about life.
Yeah.
So like, even like now, how are you? You said at the start of this, I'm great, How are you? Fantastic. Or you meet that person and depending what the status thing is in your conversation, like if it's at work, they're like, oh, I'm so busy, And that's kind of their way of saying I'm busy because I'm important or what have you. And it's not about oversharing, but it's like people are trying to put on, everyone, including me, everyone put on that highlights reel, And so she says in the book is that we're actually looking for others to be vulnerable, but for us not to be, because we understand that when we see that in someone else, it creates connection, but we won't do it ourselves, And I think that's a big thing, is that, and you can see in the way she communicates, and one of the reasons why you can connect with her writing is that she really opens up, but not to the point where it's like uncomfortable for you, I think she talks about that as well.
Well, one of the big things she says is the important thing about vulnerability is that you are sharing with people that have earned the right to hear that vulnerability. It's not about broadcasting out every single nook and cranny of your life, your deepest, darkest demons and skeletons in the closet, and broadcasting them out into the entire world, because she says that is specifically not vulnerability. That's just broadcasting. That's just, being on show. That's the same thing as running around with these highlights, this highlight reel on, because there's probably a different motivation in there. It's about that feeling of, I imagine typically certainly in like a one-on-one situation where, you feel that there might be that moment where you go, am I going to share this? And then instead of choosing to just move on into the next conversation or skip over it, you kind of lean in there and go, no, I'm going to bring that up. I'm going to say that here. I'm going to be vulnerable here. And that's where she says have the courage to be vulnerable in that situation. One that really stood out was she said that research tells us we judge people in areas that we are vulnerable to shame. And I think that's something that I'm definitely susceptible to. Mm. Yeah, and it's something that's very hard to stop. I think that's a very innate thing, which is why she's obviously picked it up in research. Yeah, and so
what's in it? Like, can you give an example?
Well, mate, my OCD tendencies to do things in a particular way just scream at me from time to time when I might see someone doing something in a way that's, maybe not as precise as it needs to be or as efficient as it needs to be. And I don't mean that
mostly when dealing with me. I think.
Mostly dealing with you trying to set up your fucking microphone.
Yeah. Or posting in Slack in a random order. I know that really kills you every time.
So that must be where I'm most vulnerable.
It's on there, it's good enough.
That must be where I'm most vulnerable to the shame.
Yeah. That's a really interesting concept that I think is super relevant. But she says that kind of it's a bit like hate isn't the opposite of love. Indifference is the opposite of love. It's like, okay, scarcity, the opposite's not abundance. The opposite is enough, is having this feeling of I'm enough, or I have enough, or my situation is enough. And that's something that I thought was really nice because it's a really kind of succinct word and it's not really used too much. So it's got a bit of, I guess you can pin a new idea to it a little bit, and the feeling of.
But hang on, Lachie. Me as an avid personal developer and someone that just wants to grow, I don't want to just get to enough. Surely I want to go more than that. How do I deal with that?
It's about enough in the moment, I think, is what she's trying to communicate. So I'm enough now, but I care about myself, so I'm going to get better, and that mindset is a great mindset. And that's all you need right now, is to know that you're going to keep going, because it's like if you're going on, you want to go to the gym every day for 2 hours and you'd miss it one day and you go, oh, fuck it, I'm done. Well, that's not really a kind enough sort of posture for yourself. You need to don't throw it all out. You're trying, that's enough, and you're going to try again tomorrow. And so I think she talks around this feeling of kind of trying to find a place where you're kind of kind to yourself. Talking to yourself like you would speak to a close friend is something that she talks about a lot, and that it brings down your armor when you do that. So give yourself a break. We're a harsh critic. The internal voice is pretty harsh, I think, for all of us. So, and this kind of idea of scarcity is all through our society. But let's, if you can kind of switch that conversation, it could be pretty powerful, I think.